Hey everyone, Ben Coomber Radio, episode number 159. We are back on the show with those crazy guys from America. Well, one guy, not, they. I say that because we've dropped a lot of jokes about Americans in the past on the podcast, those silly accents and all. But anyway, I have an incredible guy today, a very inspiring character. I think you'll learn a lot in a very different way today. This is someone that's been through more things in probably 5 years than most people have been through in their lifetime. So I hope this is going to be an incredibly inspiring podcast for you. We'll go through all the different aspects of his journey as we unpick this story. George Bryant, hello. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here with my funny accent.
It's only because I think I'm normal. And then anyone else
totally.
Is abnormal. So, sorry.
Totally. I'm jealous. I always think the accents are like the coolest thing in the world. And then, people think I sound funny. And it's a vice versa thing, but it's great. I'm excited.
It is, but if you look at my accent as an Englishman, I'm about as plain as you get.
Oh, got it. Yeah, see, over here, you sound like you're, like you get brownie points just for having an accent. Never mind how plain it is where you are.
I get you. And then if I went to Australia, you get all the chicks because they love Brits.
Yeah.
And then Americans just think we're really intelligent. So we're kind of on a win-win thing here.
Totally. It totally makes you sound super intelligent, like whether you speak or like whether you know what you're talking about or not. The accent adds so much credibility.
Boom. Right, George, let me get into what I want to try and get across on this podcast today. It's going to be, you've got a big American audience. I can imagine it's, a lot smaller in the UK. The America is your place. Tell my audience who on earth you are, what's happened, and you can start wherever you like, because I know there's a lot.
Oh yeah, there's a ton. I practice my intro every day, and today I'm going to be George Bryant, who is a professional husband, bonus dad, and pit bull father first. I'm a New York Times bestselling author of The Paleo Kitchen and motivational speaker entrepreneur. I was an active duty Marine, United States Marine, for 12 years of my life, and I was medically separated 2 years ago after 12 years of service. So my journey in all of this started way back when, when I was 15 years old, and that's when I started struggling with bulimia. That journey, as well as gaining and losing 100 pounds, almost losing both my legs, 7 concussions in the course of 3 years, overcoming an eating disorder, teaching myself how to cook, food photography, starting a blog, launching a business, writing a book, and now I'm sitting here in front of you.
Mate, you summarised that in 15 seconds. I thought you were going to go on for half an hour.
Oh, I'm going to. But
okay.
I'd like to give everybody that's listening kind of the bits and pieces of where we're going. So, yeah. So for me, really, I like to start now and go backwards, because where I am now, I'm a food blogger who I try to inspire and empower people to make the best decisions possible for your life using food as a catalyst. So my theory is that if I can inspire you or teach you or help you create a new habit around food, that it's going to trickle out everywhere in your life. If you can commit to an extra glass of water a day or an extra healthy meal every day, you're going to commit to an extra day at the gym, you're going to put in the extra 5 minutes at work, you're going to spend an extra 5 minutes in your relationship, and it's going to create breakthrough results everywhere in your life. And I've evolved to this way through going dogmatic paleo, to where everything was strict, weighed, measured, to the point of orthorexic and obsessive. And I've also gone the other way where I just kind of eat everything and don't really care what happens. And my body has experienced lots of different things in that journey. So for me, the most important piece as a man that struggled with body image and eating disorders, losing 100 pounds, has been having the healthiest relationship possible with food. And I know it's not a very common topic. It's not very common in the United States for men to talk about it and have eating disorders. So I imagine it's just about the same there. And it's a pretty prevalent problem, and it's very common. And so for me, the root of everything I do is trying to get grounded, or being grounded in, no matter what I do, it's the best I'm doing at that moment. I take a look at it, but there's no fault, no blame, no guilt, no shame, no punishing myself. And I get to empower myself. I get to celebrate every win. If I chose to eat healthy today, I get to be happy about it and proud about it. If maybe I slacked a little bit, I get to reframe it into, I didn't do the best, I can do better, I'm going to commit to this and do it again tomorrow. So staying in that positive mindset everywhere keeps me kind of set up for success. So Everybody wants to know always. Number one, the 100 pounds. That seems to be the best one. So I was seriously overweight as a child. I struggled with obesity all the way back until junior high school. And then in high school, the social pressure, the peer pressure, and everything got to me. And a couple family members made rude comments, and I started binging at a very young age. Well, when I was 17, I decided that staying in that state and around that area was not the best decision for me, and I needed to get away. So I picked the hardest thing I could find, which was the Marine Corps, and I was like, I gotta go. I tried to join. They told me I was like 42 pounds overweight, so I had a recruiter help me lose weight. He pretty much starved me, ran me, put me in sauna suits, the typical way, and then shipped me off to boot camp. And once I went off to boot camp, it was like all gone. I came out like 150 pounds soaking wet. I graduated first out of, 2,000 recruits. Like, everything I did had to be the best. In 2004, I was sent to Somalia for 13 months. So I was deployed to Somalia from the United States. And while I was there was really nothing to do except work and lift weights. So I was like, I'm going to get as big as humanly possible. And all I did was eat, sleep, lift, and work. And I got up to about 220 pounds. And I'm only 5'7". I don't know what that is in centimeters or anything else, but I'm not a tall guy. And
so hang on. How much muscle was that?
It was all muscle.
As in how many pounds?
Oh, I don't know. I weighed 220 pounds, so I was at like 10% body fat, so I imagine that there was quite a bit. I mean, I had a six-pack and everything going on, so...
Okay, I was just trying to ascertain how much muscle mass you put on from when you went out to Somalia to when you finished.
Probably 60 or 70 pounds.
In a year?
Yeah.
Jesus. So they must have something in the goat meat out there.
So I was eating those meals ready to eat that are just packed full of calories. Like, you can eat like 2,000 calories in one bite. So I would literally just eat 8 to 9 to 10,000 calories a day, and I would lift and lift and lift and lift. And, so I was out there, and then I was doing training. I had a huge pack on, which was 100 pounds. It was 130 degrees, and I was hiking, and I was experiencing extreme pain in my legs. And what that ended up turning into was exercise-induced compartment syndrome. And if you're eating right now, do not Google that. The images are not really pretty. Do not look that up. If you have a strong stomach, go for it. And through that whole process, I ended up having to have 6 surgeries. I spent 12 months in a wheelchair and did 18 months of physical therapy. And that's where the brunt of my weight gain came. Being in the wheelchair, going from active lifestyle to completely sedentary, on pain medication all day, I ended up going up to 257 at my heaviest, with the heaviest that I ever was. And so that was the down point of my bulimia, my binge eating, my purging, kind of my self-esteem and everything in my life. And I had to make a decision on whether I was going to, stay 100 pounds overweight or do something about it. I had a pretty motivating physical therapist who didn't really let me settle for anything. And they told me that I would never walk again. They had discussions about amputating both my legs. They told me I would never run again. And I did not like those answers at all. So I set my goal, set my missions, and through all the work, all the physical therapy, I ended up getting to about 190 pounds. I ran a marathon. I did a half Ironman. I tied the world record for a standing box jump, and all after they told me I couldn't do it and they were going to take my legs. So that's the weight piece of it. I mean, there's so many different places to go with this.
Yeah, well, I've just Googled that. I wouldn't recommend other people do that. It wasn't pretty. I had to find out. It's like when your mum says, "Don't touch that pan; it's hot," and you burn yourself. I had to go and look. Mate,
it's not a pretty sight.
No, did you have to have? I would take it multiple surgeries.
Yeah, I had 5 surgeries total, and then
how does it actually happen? What is the physiological process?
So the physiological process is in your calf. If you look at your calf vertically in a cross section, you have 4 compartments. You have an anterior, posterior, and then 2 overflows. And when your heart is pumping blood, it pumps into those compartments, down into your foot, and then circulates back up into your heart. Mm-hmm. When you have exercise-induced compartment syndrome, the blood gets pumped down, and it clogs and can't get pumped up, but your heart keeps filling the chambers. And your heart keeps pumping and pumping until your skin starts to stretch and explode.
Oh, man.
That's what happens.
Wow. And so why does it actually stop pumping up? What's the thing that blocks it?
What they told me was that the size of my body, like the critical mass that I had, the amount of blood that my body was trying to deliver to my muscles, I didn't have like the arterial gateways for them to actually get there. Like my heart was pumping so much and there was so much blood, but my frame in my body isn't intended to carry that mass and size, so it couldn't deliver as much blood as it was trying to, and it eventually clogged. And so it's a combination of like the fascia being constricted as well as too much getting pumped in, and that combination is deadly.
So basically what you're saying is you got so big, you exploded.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
You're like the living Hulk.
Like that's the best way to put it. Yeah, and the results were about the same. Instead of ripping my clothes, they ripped my skin. But it wasn't the most glorious, pleasurable experience ever. And the surgeries themselves were beyond not okay. When they do the surgery, if you want to see that part, Google double fasciotomy. And when they do the surgery, they cut you. So I got cut open from my knee to my ankle on both sides of both legs. So 4 huge incisions. And when they cut you open, because of all the swelling, they can't close it. So the wound actually stays open for 2 to 3 weeks. And every day they clean it and close it a little bit more, clean it and close it a little bit more. So every day you get to look down and see your bone and your calf muscle and your fascia and everything else inside of your leg.
That is fucking nuts. Oh my God. Now, I know in America they only have private healthcare. Please tell me you had healthcare at this point.
I was in the military, so I had government healthcare.
Wow,
so
okay.
It was military doctors, and I ended up getting referred to a really good civilian surgeon because I didn't trust the military. So, but yeah, it was a process, and then they stapled them shut, and then you get the staples removed, and lots of physical therapy, and but now, I'm fully functioning. They told me I'd never walk again, I wouldn't be able to work out, and I ended up going back to full duty, did another combat tour in Afghanistan, and did 7 more years of service before I got out.
Wow, man, that is insane.
Yeah, it's my legs look pretty good considering. There's just little bits and pieces missing here and there, but most people have no idea.
Yeah, I've never had that problem. So I have the genetic ability to build calves, very similar to that of that bird, the stork. Yeah, that animal.
Yeah, and that I've been. What's interesting is I had that as a child, but all the physical therapy after my surgeries, I developed calves. My calves are huge, and everybody always tells me, like, what do you do? I'm like, I don't do anything. Like, they're just that way. And all the work, like that 18 months after, like, built a massive amounts of muscle mass, and they just stay. No matter what I do. I can run, not run, lift, not lift. And they just stay. It's a pretty good problem to have now. My wife loves them.
Yeah, I think my girlfriend would love them if I had them, but I don't. So, thanks, Dad, for those genetics.
People in America get calf implants, so just don't go that far.
Yeah, I'm over it. Like, really, it's cool.
Yeah, not that important.
So we've talked about some stuff already. Let me come back to the whole bulimia thing, because I think that's a fascinating topic. Also, because we've talked about it a lot on the podcast recently. We've been starting to speak a lot more about body image, mindset, how people are thinking about themselves, whether people are happy. Because for me, all this fitness stuff is great, but if you're not happy, like it's just null and void. It's pointless.
If you're covering an insecurity, you're never going to be happy, and you're always going to be chasing something that doesn't exist.
Exactly. So for me, what led you into the bulimia, and what brought you out? Because as you were explaining it, you started to talk about almost some positive mantras and mindsets that you have, so that if anything goes wrong in your life, you almost have already a default thought process that you go to that puts you mentally back on track. And I find that interesting, because that's almost programmed in you right now.
Yeah, it is. It's practice. It's like a muscle that you got to practice and flex every day. So my bulimia started because of a comment my mother made. I was getting fitted for a suit for the first dance I'd ever got invited to. Now, I was not a popular kid. I had, my teeth stuck out. I had to wear headgear and braces. I had the bowl cut where it looks like they put a salad bowl on my head and cut my hair around it. Like I did not have the looks going for me. So I got picked on a lot. And so to be able to go to a dance was like a big deal for me. And I was getting fitted and the gentleman was really nice. And my mother made a comment about how I was overweight and the suit wouldn't fit and they didn't want to pay the difference to get the jacket to fit me to go with the pants at that size. And, I was 15 years old, so I already developed my paradigm of the world. I'd already experienced my childhood, which was full of abuse, sexual abuse, alcohol, drugs, all that stuff. And being in that position, it was almost like the straw that broke the camel's back. Like I was hanging on and like okay to function and wasn't really happy, already struggling on the inside because I was overweight at 15, which is such an awkward age, to be in that whole space. And that was it. And that night I came home, I cried, and that was the first time ever that I binge ate and that I purged. And I didn't even know like what anorexia was. Like I didn't even know what eating disorders were. I just knew that I felt horrible and out of control. And that was the first thing I did that kind of gave me the false sense of security or false sense of control, which, as we all know now, is completely asinine and not even close to being true. And so my journey with bulimia had very big pockets of aggressiveness and then kind of dormancy. So I would have periods of 2 to 3 months where I was binge eating and purging every day, and then I would go 3, 4, 5 months with no episodes whatsoever. And it was typically triggered around something emotional or something bad or something that didn't ideally happen like I wanted it to. So my go-to was to go right back to food and being bulimic. So I struggled for a long time. I struggled on my deployments. I struggled in Afghanistan. I struggled kind of all over the place. And then when I transitioned into paleo, it was another tool for me. Like my goal when I went paleo was like, it was easier to be bulimic because the foods were very simple. It was like a really simple concept. I didn't have to obsess over it. It was like eat meat, eat vegetables, do the best you can. And I'm like, well, if I can do this and I can stay skinny, I won't need to binge and purge. It was just another form of control. And when you do that and it gets projected out, it never ends up winning. But through the paleo journey, my hormones kind of regulated and my allergies went away, my body started performing better, and I was given a better platform for which to kind of take a look at where I was and what I was doing. And through the journey, as well as a few friends in the community, I started going to all the conferences and people talking about body image, and I was like, that's something I struggle with, and I never talk about it. And I'd never told anybody I was bulimic. And I was at a conference with one of my best friends, who's my business partner now, and it was like 1:30 in the morning at a bar in Boston, and we don't even drink that much, and we were just joking and laughing, and he like complimented me, told me what an awesome human being I was, and I started crying, and I was like, I'm bulimic. And like, that's the first time it ever came out. Like, and it's crazy, 1:30 in the morning at a bar, the amazing things that happened that day. But what that did was that created the space for me to be open about it and to be okay with who I was, like what I'd experienced, what I'd gone through, and not let it define my value as a person. And so after that day, I got pretty open about it. I did an interview about it the next day. I wrote a huge post on my website called Dear Bulimia, You Fought Hard, But I Won. And I made it my goal that any moment I had, any opportunity I had to talk about it, I was going to be open about it, and I was going to be like overly aggressively honest. Like, hi, I'm George, I was bulimic for 12 years. Like, hi, I'm George, just in case you wondered, I lost 100 pounds and struggle with an eating disorder. And I made it my mission to continually speak it into existence for a couple reasons. And the biggest one for me is the mindset piece. And I love that you talk about mindset and that you guys have addressed on this because, our thoughts become our actions, which create our results in this world. And so the more that we can reframe things and set ourselves up with positive affirmations and positive anchors, the better. But the thing that I struggled with, both with my bulimia and with my sexual abuse, is that the thoughts that I made up in my head about how other people were going to see me or view me or judge me were always 200 times worse than anything that's ever happened. So I would create these situations in my head that, like, if I tell someone I'm bulimic, they're going to not talk to me, not eat around me, be weird around food, not want to hang out with me, and the same thing with my sexual abuse. So the first time that I experienced me speaking it into the universe and having nothing but a positive reaction, it neutralized the charge. Like, it made the stories in my head wrong. It made the self-doubt, the limiting beliefs, the fear, the angst, the agony, the sadness. It made it all dissipate because the result that I got was completely different than the story I was making up in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a human being, we all live in this world where innately we want to be right more than anything. And we always put these filters on ourselves, like, am I going to say this the right way? Am I going to do it the right way? What's this person going to think about me? What's going to happen when I say it? And so the most powerful piece of my entire journey and everywhere in my life now, and I do this in relationships, my business, everywhere, is speaking everything into existence that I have a fear on, that I may have the ability to be ashamed of, or any of those matters, and just being there and owning it. Like, energetically owning the space, not being attached to the outcomes, whether you judge me or not, whether you like me or not, whether it inspires you or not, but just owning it and being like, this is who I am. I'm not defined by my behaviors. This is the point of my life. This was my experience, and I share it openly because it's part of my journey.
So the thing that I think people will struggle with listening to that is people will get that. They can see where they are and they can see where they want to be, but there's a tipping point of where you're telling yourself this stuff and you believe it 30-40%, and then the rest of you's going, but I'm this, I am that person. So what's your advice to getting past that tipping point?
Totally, yeah. There's a couple things. When I do my keynote on this, I talk about it and I give people a couple rules and tips. And here's the thing, like, there's so many things that popped in my head when you asked that question. Number one was be a heat-seeking missile for what you fear most. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Like, growth happens on the other side of our comfort zone. We become the biggest and baddest versions of ourselves when we just take one step past that line of demarcation. Mm-hmm. When we hit our upper limit and we're like, I can't, those moments that we have, whether it be in the gym, whether it be in business, whether it be in a goal, running a race or whatever it is, where you hit that limit and you always go to, I can take one more step. I can take one more step. Every one of those steps above that line develops you into being a bigger, stronger, more powerful person. Like, you're stretching your bubble and you're increasing your abilities. So your mind is the same way, and it's the same with all of this stuff. So my rules, and these are not mine, I've gotten these from doing a lot of personal development work with my fiance and some other stuff, but the rules are simple. It's no fault, no blame, no guilt, and no shame. So I find that a lot of us, whether you're at 20% or 40%, and you want to be different, you can recognize the actions that you need to take to be different, and you can see the path, like the linear path of where you need to go. What I experience is a lot of people try to get to the end of the road, and they miss all the steps in between, or they start to take a step, and it doesn't go how they thought it should, so they go to self-punishment, beating themselves up, negative self-talk, like, look, I tried, I didn't do it. I tried, I didn't do it good enough. It wasn't right. It didn't work. And so the 4 rules are no fault, no blame, no guilt, no shame. The second rule is make small commitments and celebrate every win. And then the third rule is look at every event as neutral. And I'm going to give you an example for this. So let's say you're listening right now, you're watching right now, and you struggle with bulimia. That's my area right now that I can talk about, and no one knows. No one knows except you. My first one would be, remember the 4 rules. There's nothing wrong with you. It doesn't define who you are as a person. It's just part of your life and behaviors that you have chosen to partake in. At any given moment, you can choose not to partake in these behaviors anymore, and you're still a whole, perfect, and complete person. So remembering that, my small commitment would be getting it out into the open, whether it's writing it down in a journal, putting it on a piece of paper, sending a text message to someone, going to my closest friend and being vulnerable and authentic, family member, child, even if you go somewhere anonymous, if you call one of the hotlines, anywhere, but just speaking it into existence would be my first goal. And then a couple things are going to happen. You're going to feel either empowered, you're going to feel liberated, you may feel sad, you may feel scared, you may feel anxious or angry, or you may end up not sharing it with anybody. looking at the event as neutral gives you the power to figure out how you can do it differently. You get to look at it and be like, you know what, I tried this, and the results weren't what I wanted. Column number 1 is what I did that worked. Column number 2 is what I did that didn't work. And column number 3 is one thing I can add to make it different next time. And then once you get that one thing to add, you make another commitment and say, you know what? In the next 24 hours, I'm going to try again. And maybe that new commitment didn't work. Once again, look at what works, what didn't work, and then try something new. And I swear that the only difference between unsuccessful people and successful people is that successful people never stop trying a different plan. No matter what shows up in their space, they never get discouraged, frustrated, or put off with the results. They literally just try something new and try something new and try something new. And so for me, that's been the most empowering and inspiring piece of my whole journey, is now being in a spot where you understand and you heard it, that it's almost like programmed in me. But that doesn't mean that I don't struggle. There's days of tears, like probably 5 days out of 7 days a week, I'm crying at some point during the day, whether it's my story of I'm not good enough, or I'm sad about the past, or my PTSD is triggered, or I'm frustrated. It's what I choose to do in those moments. You know, so for what we say, and my wife taught me this. I keep saying my wife, we get married in 9 days. I'm super excited, and I'm already wearing my ring, so I'm just like, wife, fiance, wife, but either way, she's amazing. But what she's always said to me is commitment is not feelings. There is no such thing as trying. It's black or white. If you are committed, the only thing that you get is results. And so when you live in that space and you realize that when you give your word to yourself, or when you give your word to other people and make a commitment, whether you're tired, sad, lonely, exhausted, it doesn't matter. That doesn't take away from your commitments. You always follow through with your goals, and you create different results in your life. So if you can eliminate the word try from your vocabulary and be really clear with yourself and make commitments that you can follow through with, you're going to create a positive anchor flow that continues to snowball down and down the street. And it's simple. If yours, for example, is, you know, maybe you want to add an extra interview every week, and you're like, this week I'm committing to do 1 extra interview. When you do it, you celebrate it like, I did it. Great. Next week I'm committing to add 1 extra interview. I would never want you to be like, this year I'm committed to adding 52 interviews. Because the minute you look at that, you're focused, big picture, it's overwhelming, you lose sight of where you are right now, and we kind of freeze. So if we can break it down into SMART goals that are smart, measurable, actionable, results-based, and time-based, you can start to have different results. So if you're listening, if you're watching, and this is something that you want to have a breakthrough with, and you want to tell someone, whether you struggle with body image, whether you struggle with anorexia, bulimia, and dysmorphia, or anything even in that spectrum, you can make it really simple. Within the next 24 hours, I am committed to telling one person in my life what I struggle with. And that's your only goal.
I think a lot of people will struggle with that concept because they'll make the assumption initially that the person that they tell will judge them.
Totally.
And if you've chosen someone and you think they'll judge you, I'd say you've chosen the wrong person. You want to tell the person that you think, no, this person will help me. Even, especially someone close to you. Like, I knew if this was me, I could go and tell my mum. She'd be the most supportive person in the world about it. And she'd go, right, Ben, okay, yeah, you have got yourself in a bit of a pickle, but this is what we're going to do to get out of it. And this is how I'm going to help you. So, I think reaching out to the right person, you shouldn't be scared.
Well, and you shouldn't be scared of reaching out to the wrong person either. Because technically, and this is how we live here, if you get the wrong person, you may see them as the wrong person before you even have a conversation, or they may come across as the wrong person, but either way, you can find value in whatever interaction takes place. Because whatever you're sharing, whatever you're putting out there, or whatever their reaction is back to you, has absolutely nothing to do with you. If you go to someone and you share and you're like, hey, I'm bulimic, and they're like, oh, wow, well, I can't really help you, or great, I don't care, that's a projection of their own insecurity. That has nothing to do with you. And I think that's really important for someone that is, for me, I can only speak about myself, but that was really important for me, was when I started understanding the concept that other people's reactions and other people's energy towards me had nothing to do with what I was saying or what I was doing. It had everything to do with their own insecurities and how they lived in the world.
But that would be, for me, you are someone that knew that. And if, especially someone that's young, if someone that's young doesn't understand that the issues that people project is their own insecurity, their own issues, if you don't know that, then you see that as negativity on you. And you get hurt by that.
And that's where the 4 rules come into play. No fault, no blame, no guilt, and no shame. So no matter what happens, if you can live in that space where I'm not guilty, you can't blame me, I have no shame in what I'm sharing or experiencing, and I have no guilt. When you can look at that and be energetically okay with who you are in that space, no matter what age you are, when you can be grounded in that, there's still going to be times your triggers are still going to want to go to. Like your defaults are always going to go to your subconscious of taking it personally, look, I didn't do it right, look, I did it wrong. The breakthrough in this is that the consciousness level, being aware that that's your go-to. Because when you're aware of something, when something is happening and you're present to it, you can always choose something different. And there's days where I say things to Lindsay, and I'm like, hey, babe, I don't think that's a good idea. And her reaction is not good, and I'm like, crap, I did it wrong. Oh, God, I'm such a bad husband. What did I do? Babe, I'm so sorry. Here's some flowers. Let me cook you dinner. I love you. And she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I did it wrong. She's like, it has nothing to do with you. I was pissed off at A, B, and C. Mm-hmm. I just took it out on you. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. Okay, got it. But and what I said at the beginning of this, it's a practice thing. Like, if you look at this and you want to be the biggest version of yourself, be grounded, love yourself, have a healthy relationship, it is daily practice. It is like a muscle, and it's no different than going to the gym or eating healthy or fueling your body. You're fueling your heart and your mind. And every day, it's a different opportunity for you to look at it. Like, I wake up in the morning, and there's days I go to my mirror with a Sharpie, and I write, you are beautiful. I write, you are strong, you are powerful, you are independent. And I write these to myself. You'd think that I was like a teenage girl, but it's okay, because they make me feel really grounded with who I am and where I am. I become okay with my body. I become okay with my business. I become okay with how great of a husband I am or great of a father I am. And I become okay with if I don't achieve the results that I was setting out to get, that I did my best and I can recommit today and create a different result tomorrow. So I know a lot of this, like, I get what you're saying when I hear you say, like, I get that. Like, it's such a big theory, and it sounds so simple in application, and the truth is it gets simple when it becomes practice, but it can feel overwhelming to start. It can feel overwhelming to have that first conversation or to go up to a complete stranger. By the way, my wife challenged me to this about a year ago when I was working on sharing about my sexual abuse. So I was sexually abused when I was 9 and when I was 13, and by non-family members. It was by women both times. Once was my babysitter, and then when I was 13, I was raped by 2 women who tied me up and physically abused me and then raped me. And like black eye, bloody nose, and then left me tied up to a bed for 8 hours. So you can see how I talk about it. I'm very open. Like I'm smiling. I'm okay with the energy because I realize that has nothing to do with who I am as a person. But a year ago when I started talking about it, I was struggling. So Lindsay and I were on vacation, and we were at a hotel. We were away in the mountains for a weekend, and I was really struggling. And I was struggling because the stories that I was making up in my head were completely negating all my positive self-talk. And she's like, babe, this isn't healthy. You've shared with me it's not a big deal. So she challenged me. She challenged me to go pick 3 people in the restaurant hotel and tell every single one of them that I was sexually abused. Complete strangers. And I said I was a little hesitant. I was really, really defensive. And when I realized that I was being defensive, it was because it was landing for me, and I knew it meant I had to go do it. Mm-hmm. Like, I know that when I experience like tension or anxiety or defensiveness, it's telling me that it's landing, and it means I need to go do it. Like, that's the be a heat-seeking missile for what you fear most. So Lindsay walked right by my side. I walked into the restaurant, and I remember all three instances. The first one was an elderly woman. She was about 65, and she was walking with her daughter, who was about 20. And I said, ma'am, do you have a minute? And she said, yes. I'm like, I'd like to share something with you. And she said, okay. And I asked permission because I didn't want, to just be like, hey, by the way, I was sexually abused twice and sound like a creeper. And I said, I'd like to share something pretty personal with you. She said, okay. And I said, I just want you to know that my mission is to develop a healthy relationship with my fiance, and I'm working through it, and I was sexually abused twice as a child. And this woman didn't even respond. She literally reached out and hugged me. Like, just grabbed me and hugged me. I'd never met her before, had no idea who she was. Like, I was like, okay. The second person was an elderly man who was like 45 years old. He just left the gym. He was all sweaty, like big buff guy. And I'm like, oh, this makes me uncomfortable. Like, you're like my dad. I already have some relationships up there, but I'm going to do it. And I went up to him, and I was like, sir, can I share something personal with you? He said, sure. And I was like, I was sexually abused twice as a child, both by women. And he looked at me, and he's like, okay. And then he walked away. That was it. No response, no good job, no, I'm sorry to hear that. Whatever it was in him, that was his response. And then the third was two gentlemen that were eating together. They were probably about in their mid-50s. And this was the most surprising reaction of all of them. They looked pretty stern businessmen, like down to business. And I went up to them, and I shared the same thing with them. And they invited me to sit down, and they said, we just want to commend you on that. They're like, we struggle every day with being confident and sharing about just our business decisions, and you walked up to a complete stranger and told us that you were sexually abused, to two older gentlemen who I make up you struggle with being a man and all this other stuff. So it turned into this whole mindset conversation, and it actually empowered and inspired them to be more confident in their being. And, you know, those are just three examples, and I was uncomfortable. I was scared shitless, to be honest with you. Because it was my fear. It was my fear of rejection, my fear of judgment, my fear of what's going to happen. And Lindsay just kept telling me, babe, no matter what, I'm here to support you. You are a perfect and whole, complete human being, and it doesn't matter how they react. You're only sharing because it's therapeutic for you. And I was like, okay. And I went through the whole thing, and looking back at it now, I love sharing because it was an extremely powerful moment in my life, like in general. Because now I can be on your show and I can be anywhere and be like, I was sexually abused twice, and let's talk about it. Let's talk about how you can shift your mindset. Let's talk about how that doesn't define you as a person, how that had nothing to do with you, that you're still perfect, powerful, whole, and complete as a human being, and no behaviors that you ever partaken in your life define your value as a person. Like, let's talk about that, dive into that, and get grounded there. So that's why I share, because it really keeps me in that space of I'm okay no matter what.
Incredible. Wow. See, what we're kind of looking at here is everyone's fear of the opinion of others. And what's incredible is most of the time we worry so much about literally a 2, 3, 4, 5 second thought that someone has. It's like when you're driving down the road in your car, your favourite song comes on and you start singing it at the top of your voice, and then someone looks at you and that look is, oh my God, that guy's an idiot.
Yeah, and you stop.
And you stop, you're like, oh my God. But literally that thought's gone, and he's now started thinking about what he's going to have for tea, or picking his nose, or whatever. And we are so concerned about the fleeting moments, like you just mentioned about writing stuff on your mirror with a Sharpie. Now, firstly, people would think, oh my God, what if someone's in the bathroom looking at me? Like, you know, it's always what if. And this is why sometimes with people that I coach and I try and educate, I think sometimes things are just for you and they're not for sharing. It's like sometimes, you know, people are really open about their goals. They post it on Facebook and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, while that's good for some people, for kind of accountability and, you know, sharing, that kind of stuff, sometimes you just got to get on with it and do it. And you got to find your own way to find yourself accountable, empower yourself, you know, control the habits that you might have that lead to negative behavior. Because ultimately, all this stuff is for you anyway. And it only really benefits someone else that you are close to and love anyway, like your spouse, your mum, your child, you know, whatever. So it's just amazing how concerned we get over something that is so momentarily trivial.
Totally, and like when you think about it, and there's so many people like the UK, like look at Richard Branson, look at Deepak Chopra, look at Nelson Mandela, look at Martin Luther King. Like, they were never the popular vote. Like, they were never the popular opinion, but they were so grounded in who they were. They're like, this is what I'm committed to, and I'm going to stand in it no matter what. Like, there's a really good analogy that I learned at some course or someone was speaking, and they're like, listen, this is how the world operates. There's a river running down the way, and most of society lays in the river, and they either do one of two things. They either go with the current, or they try to swim against it. And either way, it's mentally exhausting. The entrepreneurs, the thought leaders, the visionaries of the world, they just stand up and realize the water's only 6 inches deep and they can walk out. That's
nice.
it. And when you think about it like that, it's just, and I love it, and I'm just going to take it here real quick, like quantum physically, like on a quantum physics level, like everything is energy. And I actually have no idea if you really exist on the other side of this camera. Like, I have no way of knowing if you're a figment of my imagination, if you're a projection of my insecurity, or just something I need to experience that day. And when I talk to people, when I'm doing my talks on mindset and personal development, I tell them, because everybody's consumed with this what other people think. Like, whatever that thought is in the moment, they have the thought for 3 seconds, but we let it run us for 3 minutes, right? Like, it's so incongruent and it doesn't make any sense. And I'm like, listen, I'm like, if I hit the delete button and you were left standing in an all-white world with nothing but yourself, like the Matrix, like everything was gone. You didn't know human beings, no people existed. You had an unlimited amount of oxygen. You didn't need food to eat. As a human being, like as a being, take your brain out of it. Would you be okay? And they're like, well, yeah, of course I would. I'm like, you would be perfect. Like, you would know no other. You would know no negativity, no imperfection, no doing it wrong. I'm like, you would be perfect, whole, and complete. And they're like, yeah, of course I would. I'm like, then why, when you add in all these external influences that have nothing to do with you, do you think any less of yourself? And they just kind of look at you. They're like, well, that's not the same. And I'm like, just think about it. Like, just play with it. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh. And I'm like, all right. Like, here's an example. I'm like, how many times have you dreaded going to a meeting or dreaded going to a work or dreaded going into, anywhere, going out with friends you didn't like or having a bad conversation that you thought was going to go bad? And I'm like, and then literally at the end of it, looking back now, it had zero meaning on your life. It wasn't difficult. It went better than expected. And they're like, well, yeah, it happens all the time. I'm like, exactly, because this is the whole thoughts create our actions, which create our results. And you mentioned this earlier with mantras. I call them affirmations, and my intention. I genuinely believe that I am 100% responsible for everything that shows up in my space. If someone walks up to me and says, F you, I believe it's because I was being in such a manner that allowed them to say that. And there's always an opportunity for me to be different. If I'm sitting here and my wife comes in and kisses me and tells me she loves me, I know I'm being open and compassionate and vulnerable. Or if she walks in the door and goes straight to the kitchen and starts doing errands, I know that there's a space for me to be different or to act differently or show up differently to energetically shift that space. Like, I know we've all experienced, you've all been around that one person that is like infectious. Like, no matter what you do, they can just bring you up to happiness. Like, it doesn't matter if it's raining, if it's pouring, if everything is coming down and you get around this person, they're ready to sing in the car, dance in the rain, run around, and they just don't let anybody's energy affect their space. And it always brings us up a level. We all have that ability. That energy is what we control. We can create every space that we're in. And so every little thing that you can practice, that you can focus on, that you can dive into every day to own your space. And I loved how you said it's not for everybody else. Nothing we do is ever for anybody else. We may think it is. And I know right now, having this interview and doing this podcast, I'm giving you and everybody else the advice that I need to hear myself. Mm-hmm. Like, I know that I'm literally speaking to myself in a mirror, like, okay, when I get off here, I need to go right on my mirror again because I had self-limiting beliefs this morning. Or, I need to focus on talking about this more because I'm struggling with it. So when we can really focus on it, we get grounded in, and you talk about this so you understand, happiness only comes from within. And it doesn't come from materialistic things. It doesn't come from experiences with other people. It comes from being truly grounded and present with who you are. And I love that you've been talking about happiness. Because the truth really is, it doesn't matter what diet you do, what hobbies you have, what food you eat, what relationship you're in, what friends you have. If you're filling your space with outside entities to try to influence your happiness, you're always going to end up searching for something that doesn't exist.
Okay, so with that thought process, I'm intrigued by my next question. Right now, what makes you happy?
Right now, what makes me happy is knowing that my message and my journey and experiences and my vulnerability is literally changing people's lives. That every time I open my mouth and speak about bulimia, sexual abuse, mindset, personal development, anything that it has the ability and possibility to touch people and give them the strength, the courage, the tools that they need to live an elevated life. It literally fuels my tank like every single day. I have to force myself to stop working. Like I have to get off Instagram. I have to get off Facebook. I have a secret Facebook group that's invite only, and it's people that I typically advise or help, and I bring them in. And I literally spend hours a day in there answering questions, reading about their journey, their relationships, their whole 30s, their paleo journey. And I don't know, I feel like my gas tank is full for the rest of my life just off this year alone. So it keeps me really grounded knowing that my message and my vulnerability is making a difference in the world.
Nice. No, there wasn't anything materialistic there.
No, and it used to be. I mean, here's the honest part about it. Like, you talked about, like, my audience in America. Yeah, I have a couple million people a month follow me. And when I started blogging, I was what I like to call an egotistical blogger. Like, I was an idiot. I literally did things for the numbers. I was like, look how many Facebook fans I have. Look how many Instagram followers I have. I have this much traffic to my website, so I can make this much money. And I spent the first 3 years of my blogging career chasing materialistic numbers, like chasing egotistical, shallow numbers for no reason. And when I really got to take a look at my life and my relationship and my friendships and how I was showing up in the world, the feedback I got is that people didn't get that they mattered around me. Like, I continually heard from people, when I'm around you, I don't feel important. I don't feel like you listen to me, like you hear me, like you respect me, or like you value me. And these were the closest people in my life telling me this. And I was like, whoa, like that hurts. Like it hurt. And I actually asked my audience on an email for feedback. And when you email 100,000 people and ask some pretty vulnerable questions, they give you a lot of honest feedback. And it took me a couple weeks to read, I think, like 7,000 responses. And it was an overwhelming amount of negativity, that I was having a negative impact on people's lives because people thought I was self-consumed and egotistical. And it's at that moment that I realized that the way in which I was delivering my message wasn't landing, and it's because I was insecure from the get-go. I was blogging and I was sharing to fill an insecurity. I was literally doing things because I thought that if I had a certain amount of people follow me, or if I touched a certain amount of lives, that it would make me feel better about myself. And in the simplest form, it was all avoidance. Like, I was literally avoiding taking a look at what was going on, which is what you've talked about in your other podcasts, about finding what it is that truly makes you happy. And what I've learned in this past year with getting married and being a dad and all these amazing things, it's like when I look back on my week or my month or even my day, I never remember what we bought at the store or what I did with whatever toy I have, but I remember every time I made my daughter smile. I remember every time I made my wife laugh. I remember every time I made my dog wag its tail. And those are the moments that I'm collecting that are genuinely inspiring me and empowering me. And it was a pretty dramatic shift when I went from, oh, let me go golfing, let me go ride my motorcycle, let me go buy this toy, let me go buy this pair of shoes, let me buy this new gadget for the computer, let me use this new software to run the business. Like, I had this shiny object syndrome, constantly looking for happiness outside of myself. And when I really got grounded in the fact, and I've had a couple near-death experiences in my life, and I lost my father to cancer, which is what got me really passionate about food. I started realizing that all the stuff that my father had and everything he'd collected through the years and how he held on to money and all these other things did absolutely nothing for him once he was gone. And all I wanted was another day with my dad. All I wanted was another conversation, another hug, similarly like you would want with your mom. And it was interesting because my whole life I wanted to show my dad that he could be proud of me. I wanted him to know that I could make a lot of money or help a lot of people or buy toys and have a boat and have a motorcycle. And it wasn't until after he died that I realized that all my dad wanted was me to do my best. And he would have told me he was proud of me no matter what. Mm-hmm. And looking back on it, I make sure that every single time that I get the opportunity, I create an experience with anybody that's in my space. Whether it's my brother, my sister, my wife, my daughter, and my best friends. Like, my goal is not about buying the most expensive dinner or driving the fanciest car or having the nicest bottle of wine. It's about making the biggest smile and leaving people feeling better about themselves than when they got to me.
Powerful stuff, buddy. Like it.
And I'm just going to drink my coffee now.
That's 50 minutes cold, that thing. That must need to go in the microwave.
I drink it cold. I got this bad coffee habit in Afghanistan. Like, when you go 9 months at a time with sleeping like 3 hours a night and you have nothing, like, I literally, like, I call this happiness in a cup. And it's got nothing to do with the taste of the coffee, but I have such a positive anchor around coffee. Like, I remember every Afghanistan day where everything would be hectic, or I was out on missions for like 36 hours, sweaty, bloody, covered, like not sleeping. And every moment I got to like sit on my bed or sit in a chair or sit on a sandbag, I had a cup of coffee, and it was like a relaxing moment. Like, I literally trained my body that when I pick up a cup of coffee, even holding it, I have a positive anchor on like a release of like relaxation. So it's actually pretty interesting what we can do to our brains, because this was 5 years ago and I still do it.
Yeah, amazing, because you Americans drink some bad coffee.
Yes,
Holy
we do.
balls.
We could do a whole podcast on coffee, because this is probably the worst coffee I can drink, because it's Starbucks and full of mold and typically sits for 12 to 16 months before it's even used. And our best friends own a coffee shop. They single source all their coffee. They fly to whatever country they get their coffee from. They meet the farmer and handpick their beans. So I'm spoiled. Like, I am spoiled rotten. And they roast it for me, or I can roast it at home, and I know everything about it. And literally this morning when I was done with CrossFit, I'm like, I had this interview with Ben. I really want coffee. Like, I want coffee. I'm like, I'm stopping at Starbucks. And I felt like so taboo and so wrong. And I talk about how you shouldn't drink it and how there's better stuff out there. And it's a testament to like our talk, though. Like, I can look at it and be like, you know what? I stopped and had Starbucks. And I'm like, I can really beat myself up about it. I can judge myself, or I can go to, I made me having coffee more important than my health. And tomorrow, I'm going to make my own coffee in the morning and stay committed to my best self. And it's that simple. Instead of driving to Starbucks, I drive home, and I plan ahead to set myself up to win.
Amazing.
And I do have 3 tips. I do. And I know you have a question. I'll get to the 3 tips after.
No, go on. You tell me your 3 tips, because you were telling me off air as this podcast screwed up that you wanted to share something recent that went well.
Well, I don't think the podcast screwed up. I think the podcast froze because we were energetically dropping the mic. Like, we were killing it, and people were loving it. So if you're listening, know that we broke the podcast because there's so much value. So yesterday, I did a Periscope, and if you guys aren't familiar with Periscope, you can follow me. It's cavemanscope.com. I literally just broadcast my life, but I talk about mindset every day on Periscope. And I was literally getting extremely upset because people were posting in my group about how bad Mondays are and the dreadful Mondays, and it struck a nerve, because I'm like, every day you trade a day of your life for the results that you create. How dare you complain that you got to spend another Monday on this planet? Like, I would give anything to have another Monday with my dad, or with my friends, or with my 9 Marines that committed suicide, or the 11 that I lost in Afghanistan. Like, they would give anything to have your Monday. How dare you complain about your Monday? And I realized that that wasn't really going to land with people. Like, they weren't going to receive that well if I went and attacked them. So I decided to do 5 tips on how to beat the Monday blues. And 2 of them are Monday specific. So I have 3 tips on how to immediately shift your life into a positive state no matter where you are. And the first one is identify the problem. So typically, whenever we're not happy, whenever we're not feeling our best, we're experiencing something. It could be an insecurity, it could be sadness, it could be anxiety, like those thoughts we were talking about when you're singing in the car, and then your friend gives you a face. You don't even know what the face meant, but you stop singing, thinking that they were judging you. Typically, I'd want to challenge everybody. Ask your friend what they were actually thinking, because you'll probably be like, they could have been like, well, I wanted 2 cups of tea with a side of milk, and have no idea what you were even talking about. Like, they wouldn't even know that you took it offensively. They were just looking at you. But you need to identify the problem. And I'm not saying that because you need to fix it or you need to change anything. You just need to be present to what it is that's triggering you. You don't need to do anything differently. You don't need to like be a personal development guru or a scientist or anything else. Like, you just need to know what's going on. If you're right now sad or anxious or angry and you're like, oh, I'm really angry because That person at work said something to me that didn't make me feel great. You know why you're angry. And when you know why, when you're at the bottom of it and you're conscious to what it is that's triggering you, you have power over your choice. Rather than, I have no idea why I'm mad, I'm going to go hate the world, I'm going to drive with road rage or kick people on the train or whatever the heck you want to do. Mind the gap. Is that what you guys say? I like kick someone over the gap. And so when you can identify the problem, it gives you the power to choose differently. Now, my challenge to that would be like, if you can identify the problem, figure out why it's tagging you. Like, figure out what it is in you that it's affecting. Whether it's your childhood wound of you not thinking you're good enough, or whether it's frustrating because you want different results. Just be open to that. Once you identify the problem, step 1, identify the problem. Step 2, and I want you to do this right now. So pause the podcast, pause the video, whatever you're doing. I want you to make a list of 5 things that you're looking forward to in the next 5 days. Make a list of 5 things that you're looking forward to in the next 5 days. And I don't care what they are. It can be eating 2 slices of bacon like these 2 waiting for me right here. It can be drinking a cup of coffee. It can be taking your dog for a walk. It can be taking a nap, reading a book, taking a shower, taking a bath. Anything that you are looking forward to in the next 5 days, write down 5 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I challenge you even more, tweet them to Ben. Tweet them so we can see them. Tweet them to me, at Cooking Caveman. I love seeing them and sharing. But write down 5 things. And then the third step, and this is the most important one. Step 1, identify the problem. Step 2, make a list of 5 things that you're looking forward to this week. Step 3, go make someone else's day better. It's been scientifically proven that when you give to others and you cause joy, happiness, or a positive emotion in other people, it releases dopamine in your body, which pulls you out of whatever state that you're in. And it doesn't have to be over the top. It can be, you look beautiful this morning, good morning, holding the door for someone. When you walk by, instead of looking at them and then going, I don't see you, I'm not going to talk to you, I'm going to stare at my phone, saying, good morning, how are you? Or, have a nice day, or how is your day, or how's your family, or you look beautiful today, or that was a really powerful statement you made in that meeting, or you did such a great job on this project, or honey, I love you so much and I appreciate everything you do around the house, or here's a flower, or I made you dinner, or here's an extra long hug that I'm going to hold for 15 seconds instead of the typical, like, stick your butt out, hold you for one second thing. Anything. Your third step is to make someone else's day. So I challenge you right now, wherever you are, you now have a list of 5 things that you get to look forward to. Write down 1 thing that you're going to do today and give yourself a commitment within the next 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, whatever it is. Write down 1 thing that you're going to do for someone else to make their day better and hold yourself to it. Go do it. Like, make it your priority and make it your commitment. And I guarantee you, wherever you are in your life, wherever you feel that you're stuck, can't move forward, you're frustrated, you will immediately find resolve and move through it by realizing that when you give to other people, you're actually giving to yourself and increasing the value of love and compassion and everything else in the world. But, you know, I've never seen anybody fail by helping others succeed. It's just not possible.
Fantastic 3 points. I really do hope there's actually a large amount of people that do that and tweet us and actually say something online, because the amount of people that, you know, and that's the problem with the podcast, you're often listening to it in the car, on a walk, all that kind of stuff. Get your phone out, tweet it, even if you write a note and apply it later, but just do it.
And what I said yesterday, I did this live to people, and I actually could see everybody watching me. I had 178 people live, and I said, if you're committed to doing this, write the word yes. I only had 39 people write the word yes. And I said, that's interesting. And I said, I want the other 140 of you to take a look at why, when given the opportunity to take 30 seconds to make your life better, you choose not to. Like, right now, and if you're listening or watching this, I'm telling you, you have no idea the impact that this could have on your life, or if I could be your savior or messiah, or Ben could be the person here to guide you on the next path to be a billionaire or entrepreneur or whatever it is you want to do. And if these 3 tips were the only thing stopping you from having different results in your life, notice if your first go-to was just like, oh, I don't want to do that. Rather than, you know what, let me take 15 seconds and make a list and then 5 seconds to tweet it out and see if I can have different results in my life. that's trying a different plan over and over until it works. So just notice that. And I challenge every single one of you to tweet it out, to take a picture of it, and to make a commitment to do it, because you never know if this is the one step that bridges your gap that changes your life.
Well, on average, there's 13 to 18,000 people that will listen to this show, and I wonder how many tweets I get. Probably about 10. We should
get 13,000 tweets, and if not, I want to hunt down every podcast listener and take a look at their life. We can do this. Like I make everybody tweet me with the hashtag hugs and bacon. That's my hashtag. I feel like I'm going to create world peace using hugs and bacon. They are two commonalities that I think everybody needs to possess to be a good human being. You have to like to give hugs and you have to like bacon. And in that book, you're cool. But everybody jokes about it and everybody laughs about it. And I actually want to show you my laptop. So for those listening, you're not going to see this, but I'm going to point my camera down at my laptop so you can see what my laptop says. My laptop is plastered with a vinyl that says hugs and bacon about 1,000 times. And it's my goal and my commitment to how I intend to change the world. But when people post about it and tweet about it, like when you say hugs and bacon, it sounds so silly you can't help but be happy. So think about your one tweet and your 100 followers or 1,000 followers, and they see you tweet about your goal for the day or your positive mindset with the hashtag hugs and bacon. They're going to be like, what's this hugs and bacon thing? Oh, I'm going to tweet about happiness, or I'm going to share a picture of my favorite things I'm looking forward to, or I'm going to tweet about how I held the door for someone, or how I bought someone's coffee. And it's really, really crazy. Statistically speaking, we only need to affect 13% of the population to affect critical mass. That's when the pendulum starts to swing momentum in the direction of which we're going. And so if 18,000 of you are listening or 20,000 of you are listening, we can do that with 3,000 people, 2,000 people would affect critical mass, and critical mass could literally change the world. And you never know how powerful your own voice is, so I invite you and I challenge you to share it and use it. And you don't have to tweet me, just tweet it out. It makes a difference in the world. Like, it genuinely makes a difference in your world and everybody else's world. So I'm just going to hold you accountable, that's all. I guess I'm like, get on there. Like, it takes like 2 seconds to tweet. And with Siri, you can be like, hey Siri, tweet hugs and bacon, or tweet smile, hugs and bacon. You know, like, it's so minimally involved, like we can do it so quick. So I hope your readers and everybody listening tweets you more than 10 times. I'll be happy with 100. Like, that's a good goal.
We will see, George. We will see. Well, I'll make sure that after the show, when we post this, I will keep posting, you know, who's accepting the challenge, and we'll see what happens.
I mean, it's like, this is how movements are created. This is how we became who we are in this world, and the best things that we have been created. It's ambition, and it's going after crazy goals and doing it as a community. Like, hugs and bacon is so much bigger than me. Like, it has nothing to do with me. My goal is that no matter where I am in the world or what happens to me, that it continues to live, because it's a legacy and a community of people that are just genuinely giving to other people. And like, that's my step above it all. But it takes a community. Like, I am not a successful entrepreneur because I'm smart. I'm a successful entrepreneur because I have amazing people that follow and support me and believe in what I do. And none of this is possible without your listeners or your readers or mine or my readers. And I recognize that and I appreciate it. And so it's my way to give back.
Time will tell. George, we better wrap up this show.
Oh, yeah. You know, you have a life to live.
I want people to find out where you are, what you're doing right now, why people might be interested in your work. Give me some websites, some URLs, what you do, what you provide. I know you've got a best-selling book, loads of cooking stuff. Tell us.
Yeah, so the best place to find me, and this is my home base, is civilizedcaveman.com. So I just invite everybody to go to civilizedcaveman.com. My favorite places to hang out are Periscope and Instagram, and they're all linked from my website. And, you know, if you're listening, my website kind of has everything you need. There's an awesome post called 26 Things You Didn't Know About Me. If you need some inspiration to share some details with the world, try sharing those with a couple million people. And there's a post on my Bulimia if you're interested in reading about that. There's 380 recipes that are all gluten-free, grain-free, and dairy-free. There's free meal plans. There's videos. There's advice. Like, everything that you need. And if there's anything I don't have, ask me, and I will give it to you for free. Like, my goal is to provide lifetime value for you, so you have every tool necessary to live the best life possible with as little as effort as possible. So just come hang out with us at civilizedcaveman.com, and we'll make sure we get in touch. And I look forward to reading everybody's tweets because as of right now, about 13,000 of you should tweet it already.
Yeah, exactly. Remind everyone what you are on Twitter again.
My Twitter is a little different. My Twitter is Cooking Caveman because Twitter doesn't allow all the characters in Civilized Caveman. So it's Cooking Caveman, CookingCaveman. So hit me up at Cooking Caveman and make sure you tweet Ben as well. That's actually how I got a hold of Ben.
It is, yeah, it is. You actually reached out to me and I had a look at your story and I read that blog post, 26 Things You Don't Know About Me, and that was inspiring enough for me to say, I've got to get this guy on the show. Awesome.
Yeah, to be honest with you, my wife wrote it. She's like, babe, you need to share these things. You need to share these things. And I always talk about them on interviews. And there were some that I was like, oh. And she's like, I'm like, go ahead, babe, write it, and I'll post it without reading it. And she wrote it, and I hit post, and then I was like, I went back and read it, and I'm like, oh, we shared that. Okay, we talked about that. Okay, great. Everybody knows now.
The amount of comments you've got on that blog is huge, so it's been so well received by people.
Yeah, it went up, and I think the first day 220,000 people viewed it, and then over the course of a week it was over 1 million, and it was awesome because what I've seen from there is on Instagram and on other blogs, I've been emailed over 200-300 times direct links to people posting 26 things they didn't know about them. And I've read everything from eating disorders to abuse to battery, like to doing things and standing up and being powerful and using it as a tool to make their declarations to the world. Like, this is who I am. I love it. And I'm choosing to be different. So for me, I know that it was absolutely phenomenal and I love it. So thank you for reading it and thank you for having me on the show. As you can tell, I talk a lot, and I could go for like 6 hours.
Well, when the show gets posted out, I'll make sure the appropriate links go with it to make sure people know. George, thank you very much for being on the show. It's been absolutely amazing. It's been I haven't really wanted to talk. Sometimes I kind of want to get my word in, but I just wanted to let you go for it. I think you've said some inspiring stuff today, and you've also put the ball in the listener's court, and I like that. Because I want to see people reactive. There's no point listening to this information and not acting on it. Otherwise, it's just lip service to yourself, and that's bullshit. So, totally.
You invest an hour of your day listening to us. Invest 5 minutes of your day making your life better.
Exactly. And, this podcast could have been 5 minutes longer, and you would have listened to it anyway. So you always have 5 minutes to do something.
Yes, you do.
George, thank you. Everyone, go and check out George's work, civilizedcaveman.com. Tweet us, Cooking Caveman on Twitter, and I am Ben Coomber on Twitter. You know where to find me. Myself and Rachel will be back next week, but that is all from us. George, thank you again.
Thank you, sir. Talk soon.
And all of you lot, stay awesome. Hey everyone, Ben Coomber Radio, episode 158. As we sit here after last week's episode, wallowing in our hands over the England defeat to Wales, which
Whoa, go Wales!
which a large majority of you podcast listeners don't care about. But being a rugby player, and Rachel being a Welshie and a background of rugby, we care a lot.